I'm Bella, and I'm about to take you on a harrowing journey. The twisted tale of how my fiancé and I stumbled into a wonderland stained with blood and horror. We call Ruby Harbor home, right in the beating heart of Vasdahiv. I'm a rock climber, always exploring Vasdahiv's hidden spots, while Karim, my fiancé, the dedicated vet, hasn't strayed far from our city limits. So, to spice things up, I pitched this wild adventure to Mount Qaf, the majestic peak of Vasdahiv, known for its perpetual snow and mystical shrines. Now, let me tell you about Karim. Almost 26, and the apple of his overprotective parents' eyes. Our farewell was a whirlwind of cautions and concerns, as if we were kids setting out on our first adventure. I get it. Karim is their long-awaited miracle, their only child. But I couldn't help but wonder if these worries would ever let up, even after we tied the knot. Finally, hitting the Vasdahivian roads, our favorite tunes filling the air, hearts entwined in this exciting escapade. Little did we know, this journey was about to take a turn into something way beyond our wildest dreams. Just as we were cruising along, lost in our own world, a crazy thing happened. Out of nowhere, this super creepy car started honking like mad behind us. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie. You know, the kind that carries coffins to graveyards. And it wasn't just honking for fun. This thing was coming at us, fast. Before we knew it, the car slammed into us from behind. We were both shocked, jolted forward in our seats. I tried to move over, thinking it maybe just wanted to pass. But nope, it kept on our tail. It felt like it was trying to force us to go a different way, blocking us every time I tried to turn off. Then, things got really freaky. There was this loud noise, and suddenly I could barely control the car. I hit the brakes hard, and the creepy car just zoomed off, turning around and leaving as quickly as it had appeared. I got out to check the damage. Our tire was totally flat. It looked like someone had deliberately put these twisted pins on the road to cause it. Just as Karim and I were grappling with the situation, we witnessed something chilling. A bunch of people dressed like firefighters, but with their faces all covered, came out of the woods. They were holding bats and iron pipes, and even though I couldn't see their faces, their body language was screaming trouble. They were moving towards us, and let's just say they didn't seem like they were there to help. Karim and I, gripped by terror, sprinted into the woods, desperately trying to escape our ominous pursuers. They chased us, brandishing their weapons with menacing intent, their silhouettes looming ever closer. Branches whipped against our faces as we dashed through the underbrush, our breaths coming in ragged gasps, especially for Karim, unaccustomed to such frantic exertion. Just when it seemed like we had lost them, our relief was short-lived. The ground beneath our feet gave way, plunging us into an abyss of darkness. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a chilling scenario. I was alone in a dimly lit, seemingly endless hallway. Flickering lights cast eerie shadows along the corridor, lined with doors identical to each other on both sides. Panic set in as I tried to open a door, only to find a solid brick wall behind it. The same grim discovery awaited behind another door. No escape, just walls imprisoning me in this surreal maze. Then, a mechanical sound echoed through the hallway, chilling me to the bone. Turning, I saw a monstrous vehicle, a harvester, its blades spinning ominously, barreling down the corridor towards me. The realization struck me with horrifying clarity. If I didn't move, I'd be torn to pieces. I ran as fast as I could, the harvester's relentless approach echoing behind me. The possibility of a hidden exit behind any of the doors crossed my mind, but fear overruled the thought. I couldn't risk slowing down. With every pounding heartbeat, the roar of the harvester grew louder, its menacing presence a constant threat at my back. With the mechanical beast inching ever closer, a glimmer of hope appeared at the end of the hallway. A small door, more like a vent, questionable in its ability to offer escape. Heart pounding, I wrenched it open, half expecting another dead end. To my relief, it led into a narrow airway. Clambering in, I squeezed through the tight space, driven by the sheer terror of being torn apart. The menacing drone of the harvester faded into the distance, replaced by the sound of my frantic breaths echoing in the confined passage. The vent emptied me into a peculiar room, its ceiling soaring into shadowy heights. My gaze traveled upwards, noticing the absence of a ceiling, but instead an opening leading to another chamber. The walls, peppered with holes and protruding rocks, seemed almost deliberately designed for climbing. Without warning, water burst in from pipes in the walls, drenching me in a sour deluge. Panic surged as the room began to rapidly fill with water, the rising tide threatening to engulf me. I knew I had to act fast. With no other choice, I began to scale the rock-like formations jutting from the walls, each move a desperate bid for survival. Climbing higher, the water level ascended relentlessly below me. My muscles screamed in protest, but the fear of drowning fueled my ascent. I had to reach the opening above, my only chance to escape the watery grave that the room was quickly becoming. As the water surged around me, I fought against the current and slippery rocks, driven by sheer determination. Just when it seemed the water would claim me, I reached the top and pulled myself out, gasping for air. I was drenched and shivering, my heart racing from the narrow escape. The room I'd climbed into was cloaked in darkness, save for a solitary light casting an eerie glow on a dancing game machine positioned bizarrely at its center. My eyes darted around, trying to make sense of this strange place, when they landed on a CCTV camera. A chilling realization hit me. Someone was orchestrating this macabre game, watching my every move. Fueled by fear and frustration, I shouted into the void. "Where's Karim? What kind of sick game is this?" My voice echoed off the walls, filled with anger and desperation. Then, a gunshot rang out, shattering the eerie silence. A sharp, burning pain seared through my shoulder. I had been shot. Though the bullet had merely grazed my skin, the pain was intense, sending me reeling in shock and agony. As tears streamed down my face, a voice filled the room, electronically distorted to mask the speaker's identity. It was cold, unfeeling. "The next one won't hit your arm, but your heart," it taunted. "Now, since you're all wet, let's have a dance to dry you off. Shall we?" A wave of nostalgia rushed over me. It was just like the ones I played on as a little girl, spending joyful afternoons at the arcade with my father. But this machine had a sinister twist. The floor was riddled with small holes, hinting at hidden dangers lurking beneath. With a heavy heart, I stepped onto the platform. Music began to play, a familiar tune from simpler times. Despite the fear and pain, I found myself moving to the rhythm, the dance steps coming back to me. The physical activity helped me warm up, drying my drenched clothes. But then, disaster struck. A misstep on my part triggered a horrifying response from the machine. Spikes shot up from the holes in the floor, impaling my foot in multiple places. Pain coursed through my body, and blood started to pool around my feet. Realizing the gruesome nature of this game, I knew I had to keep dancing despite the agony. Each move was a battle against pain and fear. Miraculously, I managed to complete the game. The sound of pre-recorded cheers filled the room, accompanied by a shower of confetti, a macabre celebration. A door clicked open in response to my forced performance. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I hobbled towards the newly unlocked door, my injured foot leaving a trail of blood behind. As I stepped into the next room, a sharp pain shot through my head. The ceiling was perilously low, forcing me to crouch. The narrow confines of the space were a claustrophobic nightmare, every inch crammed with miniature objects. But there was a sinister aspect to their design. Each piece was crafted from rusty, sharp metal, and the remnants of old bloodstains were visible on several of them. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized the gruesome challenge ahead. I had no choice but to navigate through this treacherous maze. With painstaking caution, I began to edge forward, trying desperately to avoid the razor-sharp hazards. Despite my careful movements, the objects tore at my clothing, scratching and slicing my skin as I squeezed through the oppressive space. Blood began to seep from countless small cuts, marking my progress through the room. The pain was almost unbearable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I emerged on the other side, battered and bleeding. Upon opening the door to the next room, a wave of dense, peculiar smoke enveloped me. The door snapped shut behind me, sealing me inside. The air was thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe. In the center of the room stood a massive hookah, its serpentine coils emitting a steady stream of smoke that filled the space, clouding my vision and muddying my thoughts. My head began to spin, a light dizziness taking hold as I tried to orient myself. In the corner of the room, there was a TV, displaying only the lower half of a man's face. His smile was unnerving, too wide, too artificial. I waved, shouted, even made rude gestures at the screen, but the man's smile remained unchanging, frozen in that eerie expression. Then, in a voice distorted to hide its true nature, he began to speak.
"Welcome, my dear Alice, to the next part of our game. You are among the very few to reach this stage. On that silver plate, you'll find a small gift. It's almost over now. Take it, and proceed to the next room."
Reluctantly, I approached the plate. It held a strange plant, unlike anything I'd ever seen. Knowing the consequences of refusal, I consumed it. It was bitterly unpleasant, and as it went down, a rush of blood pounded in my head. My vision blurred, my thoughts scattered, a sense of unreality washing over me. Then, the sound of a door unlocking snapped me back to the present. I stumbled towards the newly opened passage, each step an effort as the world around me seemed to sway and distort. I found myself in what seemed like an endless cornfield. The sky above, or perhaps it was just a blue ceiling, was a distorted canvas, making it impossible to discern reality. Everything appeared twisted and surreal, as if seen through a warped lens. A distant light beckoned, a solitary guide in this bewildering landscape. As I made my way towards the light, the cornfield transformed into a nightmare. The plants around me seemed alive, malevolent. Were they actually moving, or was it a trick of my mind? Terrifying shapes emerged, eyes glaring from the stalks, sharp teeth grinning menacingly from the ears of corn. I couldn't tell if these horrifying visions were real or hallucinations, but the fear they invoked was unmistakable. Pushing through the aggressive vegetation, I kept my focus on the guiding light. The world spun around me, a dizzying, nightmarish whirl. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I reached another door. With the last of my strength, I pushed it open and stumbled into the next room. This room, in stark contrast, was starkly empty, save for a small table set under a spotlight. On it was a quaint tea set, as if waiting for a guest. My steps were hesitant as I approached, and as I did, a TV flickered to life. It was the same grinning, cat-like face I had seen before, that unsettling smile seeming to follow my every move. In my confused state, I reached towards the TV, half expecting to be able to grab the grinning face staring back at me. The man's voice, still distorted, echoed in the room.
"Enjoy some tea, my dear Alice. It will cleanse you of the poison."
His words swirled around me as I mechanically poured the tea and took a hesitant sip. The ordeal left me on all fours, heaving and gasping. After what seemed like an endless bout of sickness, I slowly stood up. The dizziness that had clouded my mind was miraculously gone, but the anger and frustration remained. I glared at the grinning man on the TV and showed him my middle finger. His smile never wavered.
That's no way to treat your host, especially since I've prepared a party for you in the next room. Your final test awaits, and then you'll be free, my dear Alice.
As he spoke, another door clicked open. As I stepped into the next room, my eyes immediately landed on a surreal sight, a long table set for a tea party, right out of a storybook. But the scene was marred by a harrowing reality. There, tied to one of the chairs, was Karim, my beloved fiancé. He looked battered and bruised, a strange metallic contraption clamped onto his head, his eyes closed as if in pain. My heart lurched at the sight of him, so vulnerable and hurt. I rushed towards him, desperation fueling my steps, but suddenly a sharp spike shot up from the floor, blocking my path. The familiar, distorted voice echoed through the room.
Not so fast, dear Alice. Observe the hat on your dear one's head, a most ingenious device. See that large clock?
As if on cue, a massive clock descended from the ceiling, its ticking ominously loud in the silent room.
You have 1 minute,
the voice continued.
And with each passing second, the hat tightens. In nearly a minute, your dear Karim's head, well, let's just say the outcome will be messy. But solve our little riddle, and you can save him.
Panic gripped me as I screamed, the ticking of the clock a relentless reminder of the ticking time bomb on Karim's head.
Now, riddle me this,
the man's voice taunted.
The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I?
I repeated the riddle to myself, pacing in frantic thought. Then it dawned on me. Footsteps! I exclaimed. The answer is footsteps. The more you take, the more you leave behind. The moment the word left my lips, the clock halted, the spike retracted into the floor, and a key on a string descended from above. I snatched the key and dashed to Karim. As I frantically unlocked Karim's restraints, he rose unsteadily to his feet. Together again, we embraced briefly, relief washing over us. Without hesitation, we moved towards the next door, which creaked open invitingly. Our hearts raced with the hope that this nightmare might finally be over. But what awaited us was another surreal tableau. We found ourselves in the center of a crudely constructed courtroom, its perimeter lined with dolls dressed as jurors and spectators. The decor was a patchwork of cardboard and oddities, creating an eerie facsimile of justice. At the center of this makeshift courtroom stood a stand, on which lay 2 pieces of paper and pens. As we approached, the now familiar, distorted voice filled the room.
Ah, yes. Congratulations on completing the game,
it said, a hint of mockery in its tone.
But there's just one small detail we overlooked at the beginning. Our agreement. It's a mere formality, really. By signing this, you acknowledge your voluntary participation in our game, fully aware of the potential dangers. And, of course, you grant us the right to record, distribute, and monetize every moment of your ordeal. Don't worry, your acquaintances won't see it. In return, you'll receive a small share of the profits. And your freedom. Sign it, and you're free to go.
The distorted voice issued a chilling ultimatum.
If you choose not to sign, you'll be at the mercy of the Queen's wishes.
Almost on cue, a pre-recorded voice emerged from a doll, garishly dressed as a queen, positioned regally at the head of the courtroom.
Off with their heads!
it declared in a mock royal tone. Karim, his voice trembling with rage and fear, vehemently protested. "We won't sign this madness. We'll fight you. We'll take you to court. But his words were cut short as I, driven by a mix of fear and instinctual survival, slapped him across the face. The sound echoed sharply in the silent room. "Sign the damned paper!" I yelled, my voice strained with the horrors I'd endured. "You have no idea what they're capable of, what they've put us through!" With shaking hands, I grabbed the pen and scrawled my signature across the document. Karim, still in shock from my outburst and the surreal ordeal, followed suit. A door, previously unnoticed, swung open with a soft click. We walked through it, entering a dimly lit garage. There, to our astonishment, was our car, looking just as it had before this nightmare began. The tires were fixed, and the keys were in the ignition, as if beckoning us to leave this place behind. We got into the car wordlessly, each lost in our own tumult of emotions. The engine roared to life, a sound that had never been so welcome. As I adjusted the rearview mirror, a surprising sight caught my eye. A bewildering mix of emotions washed over us. Was this the promised token of the prophets? It felt surreal, almost like a dream within the nightmare we had just escaped. Karim's face, still marked by the red imprint of my hand, turned towards me. There was a moment of silence, a heavy air of all we had endured hanging between us. Then, almost in unison, a smile broke on our faces. A smile of relief, of disbelief, of a shared ordeal finally ending. We looked at each other one last time, an unspoken agreement passing between us. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. The car rolled out of the garage, and we entered the roads of Vasdahiv. The evening sky was painted in shades of purple, a striking backdrop to our journey home. The road stretched out before us, both familiar and strange after what we had been through.
Hope you all enjoyed tonight's tale from the world of Vasdahiv. There's a whole universe to explore in my upcoming novel, Vasdahiv Twisted Tales. Get ready to follow Arta into realms you can't even imagine. I'm Vandad, the first Iranian virtual influencer and your guide to all the wonders and mysteries of Vasdahiv. Good night, adventurers.